Psychology of Motivation, a book that compiles Professor Diego Gonzalez's research work during more than 40 years of theoretical and empirical work on human motivation. Our channel took on the task of rereading it and compiling the phrases that we consider most relevant and meaningful in our current moment. Here are the phrases. Human motivation is historical social. Motivation awakens, initiates, maintains, strengthens, or weakens the intensity of behavior and ends it once the subject's goal is achieved. The motivational process consists of constant determination and transformation between the needs of the personality and the reflection of the real world. Motivation contains a unity of opposites, the expression of the active, stable, creative, and autonomous function of the personality, and at the same time, the immediate reflection of the external world and the organism itself. Personality determines motivation, participates in it, and engenders it in the individual's interaction with his environment. The motives of action characterize not so much the already formed properties of the personality, but the circumstances in which the man's life has developed. Character is the consolidation of motivation in the properties of the personality. Once formed, it constitutes a relatively autonomous factor that actively regulates behavior and conditions the refraction of external influences. The psychic motivational process is not a possibility or potentiality of self-motivation and reaction. Still, it is the reality of motivation itself, which immediately and currently reflects the circumstances in which the subject lives. The external and socio-historical activity of the human being is different from and regulated by his higher motivation. At the same time, it is in unity with it and constitutes its fundamental determinant. Although the motivational process is internal and psychic, it cannot be adequately explained if its intimate unity with external activity, its objects and stimuli, is not taken into account. The division of labor has resulted in the fact that man's work does not serve to satisfy organic and individual needs, but to meet social demands and needs, which determines both the convergence and the divergence between the motive and the end of the activity. The activity of the human being is social. It is directed to the fulfillment of a social function and is regulated by the social conscience assimilated by the individual. The psyche owes its existence to the functioning of the biological organism of man, especially that of his brain. The motive arises because the subject cognitively reflects the objective possibility of obtaining satisfaction and values it depending on the internal conditions of his personality. The motive is the psychic reflection of the object goal of the activity. The appearance of a motive allows the desire to be transformed into wanting, which implies the orientation to act and therefore the aspiration to master the corresponding means that lead to its realization. Personality and motivation constitute a reflection in the human being of society, of social conscience, and of the functioning of its institutions and groups. Material relations will largely determine which contents of social consciousness are deeply assimilated by the subject and become part of his needs and motivation. Adult motivation is qualitatively different from childhood motivation, although it is linked in its genesis to childhood experiences and expresses the facts and tendencies of previous life. Motivation is oriented toward seeking immediate satisfaction and avoiding the dissatisfaction of needs. Psychoanalysis has reduced the human being to his tendencies. Thus, it limits history to the interplay of purely personal and unconscious motives, ignoring the class struggle and the ideological struggle that expresses it. Motivational orientations are different and irreducible to each other, but at the same time they contain and transform each other reciprocally and form a close unity. The balance of motivation and motivated activity of the normal adult man consists in the harmonious satisfaction of all his needs, both social and individual. Human motivation reflects external determinants and, in turn, the creative result of the subject's internal activity, arising based on said reflection. A relative harmony between the affective and cognitive components of motivation leads to development and balance.